G'day guys, today we're going to go through a couple of really easy techniques to use when you're retrieving your plastics for flathead. Alright, so we're going to start off on a pretty easy one, which is a slow roll. So I've just cast my plastic out, I've waited for it to hit the bottom, and I'm just going to slowly wind that back towards me. And what I want there is I just want that plastic to gently rub across the bottom that I'm fishing, and that's going to create a bit of noise and get those flathead excited. And a couple of variations I can use with this is after every few winds I can pause, and I can also add in a few twitches as well. So both great techniques. I quite like using this retrieve when it's a slower bite period because I can cover more ground, and it can quite often spark up that reaction bite. But as a rule of thumb, the lighter the jig head you're using, the slower you're going to have to retrieve, because you want to keep that plastic on the bottom there. But when it's not quite as good as when you're fishing areas with a lot of weed, because you're going to run that plastic straight through that weed and it's going to have a tendency to get a lot on your jig head. So great technique for when you're fishing cleaner bottoms, but not as much when you're fishing weedy ones. Alright, so now we're going to get on to hopping, which is probably the most commonly used technique out of anything else, and great for beginners as well, but it's still super effective. And what we're going to do there is just going to give that plastic a single hop, or we can also do a double, and if you're quick enough, even a triple hop as well. So this is quite good if you're fishing those weedy areas, because instead of running that plastic straight through the weed, we're going to be hopping it up over it, and it's not going to quite catch as much weed as say a slow roll does. Alright, so we're going to finish up on flicking, which is probably my favorite technique. What we're going to be doing there is quite aggressively flicking our rod tip. Now, if you're having dramas doing that with your wrist, you can set your finger on your rod tip like that, and it just allows you to a lot of control and to really aggressively flick your rod tip. So when I'm generally using that technique is if that water's discolored, especially in things like creek entrances, drains, or even muddy banks as well. I'm giving those really good flicks because I want that plastic to create a lot of water movement and vibration, and that allows me to do that, which is just going to help that flathead find that plastic. So great technique. What it can also do is when you're flicking quite hard like that, if you are getting a little bit of weed on your plastic, it'll actually dislodge that as well quite often. Not always, but definitely more than say a hop would. Alrighty guys, well that's just a couple of simple retrieves you can use when you're flicking for flathead. I will generally switch up quite a bit during the day depending on what ground I'm working, and also depending on what the flathead are doing. So if I'm finding a retrieve working a lot better than the other ones, I'll generally stick to that most of the day. But other than that guys, hope you have a great day, and I hope that's helped you out a bit. Cheers.